Okay, so picture this. You land your dream job, right? 6 months in, bam, totally burnt out.
Oh, wow.
That's exactly what happened to Janelle Classen, an ER nurse over in Australia. And we're going deep on her story today, seeing how she took that burnout, flipped it, turned it into a whole mission to help other healthcare folks dealing with the same thing.
Hello and thank you for listening. Welcome to the Afterburn, where Jake Carter and I break down the latest episodes of the Ignition Path podcast. I'm Ava Morgan, and every week we dive into the conversations between host Kyle Goodnight and his incredible guests. And we're here to give you a thoughtful review. No fluff, no bias, just our honest take on the topics discussed.
That's right, Ava. Pulling out the nuggets of wisdom and sometimes debating the finer points. We've got plenty to discuss, so let's dive into it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Janelle's story, it's like it unlocks this hidden problem. We hear burnout in healthcare all the time, but her experience, it shows you how deep it really goes.
Yeah.
Especially for like those just starting out.
Totally. And we've got this interview of hers. It's from the Ignition Path podcast. The host, Kyle Goodnight, he's a paramedic himself.
Oh, okay.
And she talks about that whole shift going from nurse to entrepreneur. And she gets real honest about what it's actually like in healthcare, like down in the trenches.
I bet having those firsthand views from both Janelle and Kyle, that's got to be so valuable. Because it's not just, some theory. They're wrestling with this system, a system that, let's be honest, isn't always built to support its own people.
Yeah, absolutely. And Janelle, she doesn't sugarcoat anything. She talks about feeling just totally swamped. Only 6 months in, it's like the system was chewing her up and spitting her out,
Oh, wow.
And she even went to a senior nurse for advice, hoping for, I don't know, some wisdom, some guidance.
Makes sense.
And what did she get? Suck it up.
Oof. I know, right?
It's like that suck it up attitude. It's exactly what Janelle's pushing back against. Like, that's the problem. This whole normalizing of burnout in healthcare, it's dangerous.
Okay.
You imagine being told that your suffering is just part of the job description.
Right. It's like, well, you signed up for this, so just deal with it.
Exactly.
But here's where her story gets inspiring. Janelle, she refused to just accept that. She was like, there has got to be a better way. So she dives headfirst into research, reads tons of books about resilience, even looks into coaching programs. Like, she's on a mission. That's awesome. I really like how she didn't just, get stuck feeling like a victim. She took charge of her own well-being, started looking for solutions. That's where her entrepreneurial spirit kicks in, I think.
Oh, yeah, for sure. She realized that those, generic self-care tips, they weren't cutting it for nurses. Take a bubble bath, go for a walk. That doesn't touch the real issues, the emotional weight nurses carry. So she took everything she learned, mixed it with her own experiences, and created this totally unique approach. And that's how Nursing the Nurse was born.
That's a big point, though, right? Because she recognizes nurses need more than just a Band-Aid solution. They need strategies that last, something built for the realities of their job. Her program, it's a direct answer to those generic fixes we see all the time.
You got it. And she started small, just sharing these strategies with coworkers, and saw the difference it made. Like she was planting these seeds of resilience,
I love that. It's like that saying, you can't heal alone. Having that support, even just one person who gets it, it can be huge in a high-stress job.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this is where things get really interesting. Janelle turns this passion into something bigger. She writes a book, Nursing the Nurse, the ultimate 6-step guide to beating nurse burnout. And then she goes and develops a whole course to go with it.
That's smart. It's like she's creating this roadmap for other nurses, right?
Yeah.
Helping them avoid the traps she fell into, reclaim their well-being before they hit that breaking point.
Exactly. And you know me, I love a good program name. And this one, it delivers. The course is called, get this, Nursing the Nurse, the ultimate walkthrough.
Nice.
It's like she's saying, I've been through it, I know the way out, and now I'm going to walk you through it step by step.
Yeah, and I think that's really smart because it speaks to that feeling of being overwhelmed, which a lot of nurses face. They know they need help, but they don't even know where to begin. So this walkthrough, it gives them a structured, manageable approach.
For sure. And she doesn't stop there. She creates a membership program too. Nursing the Nurse, the holistic huddle. It's like this supercharged support system with ongoing resources and a whole community of nurses who are on the same page.
I bet that sense of community is so vital, especially in a job that can feel so isolating, You're surrounded by people, but dealing with this heavy stuff alone, this huddle, it creates a space for shared experience, collective healing.
Totally. And she even brings in experts from different fields, a physiotherapist, a nutritionist, a mindset coach, to offer this well-rounded support.
See, that's key, right? It shows that burnout, it's not just a mental health thing. It affects you physically, emotionally, the whole package.
Yeah,
This holistic approach, recognizing that, it's crucial for lasting well-being.
it really is. But what stood out most to me, honestly, is Janelle's emphasis on being healthfully selfish. She's not afraid to say that nurses need to prioritize themselves, which in a profession where self-sacrifice is like built into the DNA, that's a pretty radical idea.
It makes you wonder, doesn't it, if that ingrained selflessness is part of what fuels the burnout problem? Almost like they're trained to ignore their own needs while serving others, and the system just encourages that.
Yeah, it's like a vicious cycle. And Janelle, she's challenging that head on.
Which is brave,
Hmm.
because there can be so much guilt wrapped up in putting yourself first, especially when people's lives are literally in your hands. But she's making the case that to truly care for others, you got to care for yourself
You
first.
got it. And she even talks about how, for a lot of nurses, asking for help, it feels like admitting weakness.
Yeah.
And that's so dangerous, especially in a field with such high stakes.
Right. That silence, the hesitation to reach out, that's what lets burnout fester and grow. Both Janelle and Kyle, they're pushing for this culture shift where vulnerability is seen as strength, where asking for help becomes normal, not the exception.
Exactly. Like they're saying, look, we've all been there, hit that wall. It's not a weakness, it's just being human. And by recognizing our human limitations, we actually become more effective, more compassionate in providing healthcare.
For sure.
Now, let's dig into some specific moments from Janelle's interview that really bring these issues to light.
There's this one part really got to me. Janelle's talking about her breaking point, right? And it wasn't like one big awful event. It was this gradual buildup of stress, like almost like a cup slowly filling up until it just spills over.
Yeah, it's that everyday grind, isn't it? Those long shifts, never enough staff, carrying the weight of people in crisis. Then you go home, try to shut it all off, only to do it all again the next day.
And it's not just the patients either. It's the whole system. Janelle talks about feeling totally unsupported by management, like her well-being wasn't even on their radar. And that lack of support from the top down, it breeds this culture where people are terrified to speak up, to admit they're struggling.
Which brings us right back to that suck it up mentality, right? It's almost like the system's gaslighting them, saying their suffering is normal, expected, even a sign of dedication.
It's so messed up because it stops people from getting help. They start thinking, this is just how it is, there's no other way. But Janelle's pushing back against that. She's saying, no, it doesn't have to be like this. There are tools, strategies, support systems, things that can help.
And her story proves it. She went from feeling totally lost and overwhelmed to building this incredible resource for other nurses. It wasn't just about finding solutions for herself, but sharing them, creating this ripple effect of change in the whole profession.
And that's where her entrepreneurial side really shines, right? She saw a need, built a solution, then made a whole platform to share it with the world.
It's brilliant because it lets her reach way more nurses than she ever could just working within the system.
It's like she had to step outside the system to really change it from within. And by making a business around this, it's sustainable. She can keep making resources, offering support, pushing for a more compassionate system.
Okay, let's get into the specifics of her program, because this is where it gets really good.
Mhm.
The core of Nursing the Nurse is this 6-step framework for beating burnout. And I love this because it's not just about coping mechanisms, it's about empowerment. It's giving nurses the tools to take back control.
That first step, self-awareness, it's so important. Forces you to stop, take stock of where you're at. Janelle asks nurses to really look at their well-being, physical, mental, emotional, figure out their specific stressors, recognize the early warning signs of burnout.
But she's saying you can't fix what you don't understand.
Exactly. Without that self-awareness, you're just reacting to the chaos, getting swept away.
Huh.
But once you get yourself, your triggers, your limits, you can start making conscious choices.
Step 2 is all about stress management techniques. That's where the practical tools come in. Janelle teaches nurses specific ways to, like, regulate their emotions, calm their nervous system when things get intense.
I think this is where her program really stands out from all those generic self-care tips. It's not just take a bubble bath. It's about learning techniques, things like mindfulness, breathing exercises, even time management skills, all designed for the specific stressors they face.
And it's not just managing stress in the moment, it's about preventing it, which is where step 3 comes in setting boundaries.
This is huge for nurses.
Yeah.
They're naturally caring people, but that can lead to them taking on way more than they can handle. So Janelle, she guides them on setting healthy boundaries with coworkers, patients, even family, so they can protect their energy and prevent resentment from building up.
She talks about learning to say no, which I can imagine is so hard in a job where you're constantly being asked to do more with less.
And it's not just saying no, it's about knowing your limits, knowing when you need to step back, recharge, and then communicating those needs clearly.
So step 4 is about building that support system. And this isn't just friends and family. It's about connecting with other nurses, finding those people who truly get what you're going through.
Having that shared understanding, that camaraderie, it makes such a difference. It's a safe space to vent, debrief, process all those heavy emotions that come with the job.
Right. You can't just bottle it all up. It has to go somewhere.
Right.
And having that outlet, that group of people who get it, that can be incredibly healing.
It's recognizing you're not in this alone. Others have walked this path and found their way through, and they can offer guidance, support, a shoulder to cry on when you need it.
Then we get to step 5, which is all about finding meaning and purpose in your work. This is where Janelle encourages nurses to reconnect with their why. Like, remember what drew them to this profession in the first place.
Yeah, it's so easy to get lost in the day-to-day, lose sight of the bigger picture. This step reminds them of the good they're doing, the lives they're touching, and helps them tap back into that sense of purpose that can fuel their resilience.
Like she's saying, hey, even when it's tough, remember why you're doing this. Remember the good you're putting out there.
Because that sense of purpose, it can be so powerful, especially when you're facing challenges. It gives you something to hold on to, something to fight for, even when you feel like giving up.
And finally, we get to step 6, which is all about self-care. And this isn't just about bubble baths and face masks. It's about building a sustainable lifestyle that supports your well-being, physical, mental, emotional, the whole picture.
This is another area where Janelle's program shines because she gives practical strategies that are actually tailored for nurses. We're
Yeah.
talking about sleep, healthy eating, finding time for relaxation, hobbies, even if it's just for 15 minutes a day.
It's understanding that self-care isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. And it doesn't have to be this big, elaborate thing. It can be simple, like taking 5 minutes to just breathe, stretch, disconnect from the chaos, and reconnect with yourself.
Exactly. And it's about making those small acts of self-care non-negotiable, like brushing your teeth or showering. Because when you take care of yourself, you're actually better able to care for others.
Now, all this is great in theory, but Janelle doesn't just leave nurses hanging with these 6 steps. She built this whole ecosystem of support with her course, her membership program, even her upcoming podcast.
It's like she's built a bridge between knowing and doing. You can't just read about this stuff. You gotta put it into practice. And her program gives you the structure, the support, the community to actually do it.
Let's talk about that membership program, because I think this is where Nursing the Nurse really comes alive. It's called the Holistic Huddle, and it's way more than just a support group. It's like a gym membership for your mental health, but specifically for nurses.
And that focus is what makes it so powerful. She gets the unique challenges they face, and she built a program that tackles those challenges head on.
She brings in experts from all these different fields to provide this truly holistic approach. You've got physiotherapy, tackling the physical toll of the job, nutrition guidance, helping them make healthy choices, even with crazy schedules, and mindset coaching, giving them tools to manage those negative thoughts and build resilience.
That's so smart. Because it recognizes that burnout isn't just in your head, it affects you on every level, physical, emotional, even spiritual. And by addressing all those aspects, Janelle's created a path to well-being that actually lasts. It's not just about coping, it's about thriving.
And it's all accessible through an app, so nurses can use these resources anytime, anywhere, whether it's a quick meditation during a break, a healthy recipe, or a pep talk from the mindset coach. The support's right there in their pocket.
That accessibility is so crucial, especially with the crazy hours and unpredictable nature of nursing.
But beyond the practical stuff and expert guidance, the Holistic Huddle offers something even deeper, a sense of community.
That feeling of belonging, of being understood by people who truly get it, that's where the magic happens. Like having this built-in support system of nurses who've walked in your shoes.
And they're not just sharing struggles, they're celebrating successes, those small wins, those moments of resilience.
It creates this positive cycle, this upward spiral, where each person's progress inspires and motivates the others. And that collective energy, that commitment to thriving, it's contagious.
Janelle's creating a movement within nursing, one that challenges the status quo, breaks down the stigma around mental health, and empowers nurses to put their well-being first.
And it's spreading. She's launching her own podcast soon, focused on mental health and well-being in healthcare. That's going to be huge because podcasts can reach people right where they are, normalize these conversations about topics that are often brushed under the rug.
It's like she's taking this underground movement, bringing it to the surface, creating a space for nurses to share their stories, connect, and push for change.
And it's not just nurses either. Her work has implications for anyone in healthcare, anyone in a high-stress job, really.
Because at the end of the day, we all need to be healthfully selfish, to some degree. We all need to take care of ourselves to show up fully in our lives, our work, for the people we care about.
Janelle's story reminds us that resilience is a choice. Burnout isn't inevitable, and we all have the power to create a more compassionate and sustainable future, starting with ourselves.
Yeah, it's like we're taught that pushing ourselves to the limit, that's what makes you a good healthcare worker. But Janelle's showing us, no, real strength is knowing your limits and having the guts to ask for help.
And that help, it doesn't always have to be, a therapist or a fancy program. Sometimes it's just those honest conversations with colleagues, building a culture where it's okay to say, hey, I'm struggling.
Right, but that takes a real mindset shift.
Yeah.
Challenging those deep down beliefs about what it means to be a good nurse, dedicated, all that.
For sure. It's moving away from that martyr thing, embracing a bigger picture of well-being, realizing our personal lives, our work lives, they're all connected. You can't just compartmentalize stress, emotions, exhaustion. It spills over.
Janelle's a perfect example. She had to go through it herself, hit that wall, before she realized something's got to change. And that change, it started with her choosing to take care of herself.
And that's such a powerful message. It shows us we're not helpless against burnout. We have options. We can make choices.
But it's not just about individual choices, though, right? The system itself, healthcare, it needs to change, too.
Absolutely. We got to ditch this culture of silence, this idea that healthcare workers should just grin and bear it, deal with the emotional toll, the mental strain, all of it.
We need a culture where getting help is seen as a good thing, where taking care of yourself is a priority, where healthcare workers feel supported, like they matter.
And that starts at the top, with leadership. Creating workplaces where people feel safe speaking up, admitting their struggles, asking for help without feeling judged.
It's about making well-being a core part of quality care, not some extra thing, some luxury.
Because, let's be real, a burnt-out healthcare worker, they can't give compassionate, effective care. Their exhaustion, their emotional drain, it affects everyone around them, colleagues, patients, everyone.
Janelle's work is putting a spotlight on this. In her program, Nursing the Nurse, it's giving people a way forward, empowering nurses to take care of themselves so they can better take care of others.
And it goes beyond just nurses. Her message, it speaks to all of us no matter what we do. It's that reminder, we all need to be healthfully selfish sometimes. We got to take care of ourselves to show up fully in our lives, our work, for the people we love.
It's a call to action, to question those unspoken expectations, those rules that nobody talks about, the ones that lead to burnout and keep us from asking for help.
It reminds us resilience is a choice, and sometimes the bravest thing we can do is reach out for support.
So, as you go through your day, as you deal with the demands of work and life, I want you to think about this. What are those unspoken expectations in your world? And how can you challenge them? How can you create a better, more supportive space for yourself and the people around you?
Remember, your well-being matters. And when you take care of yourself, you're not just helping yourself, you're helping build a more compassionate, more resilient world. All right, that's it for today's review on the Afterburn. Thanks for joining us as we broke down another awesome episode of the Ignition Path podcast. If you haven't listened to it yet, make sure to check it out. Kyle always brings something new to the table, and we're here to make sure you don't miss a beat.
For sure. And don't forget, each week, we're here to give you the straight talk on these episodes, pulling out what really matters for your entrepreneurial journey. See you next time, and keep igniting your path to success.